Good morning. I hope you are well. Welcome to this next in our series of talks and readings to accompany our virtual live stream communion services whilst our church here at St Elizabeth's in Eastbourne can't be opened because of the coronavirus outbreak. For those who may not know me, my name is David Gillard. It's lovely to be with you in this slightly strange format. So, a reading first of all from the Bible. That reading is from John chapter 20, verses 19 to the end of the chapter. On the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and side, and the disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. Again Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." And with that he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of anyone, their sins will be forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven." Now Thomas, called Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe it." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." And Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Jesus did many other miracles, signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. The room was quite dark. Not too much light, candlelight or those little oil lamps lit the room, but not too much, should it give their room away. The disciples knew that something was up, but they were not sure what it all meant. So they were unsettled. Actually, that would be an understatement. Basically, they were afraid that what happened to Jesus would happen to them. So the lights were low and they were quiet. But somehow Jesus was there, fully alive, and as Thomas was to discover a bit later on, real close, physically there, real flesh and real wounds that could be touched. Now Jesus' first words are significant. "Peace be with you." That is a traditional greeting, yes, yet Jesus emphasizes it by saying it twice. Peace be with you. Wholeness in body, mind and spirit be with you. Wholeness, completeness in relationship between us and God be with you. Peace be with you. A bit earlier on in John's Gospel, Jesus tells his disciples that his peace is different. And one thing that lockdown has brought with it is quieter, more peaceful roads. For the world around us, peace means quiet. Peace means calmness. But for Jesus, peace is far deeper. It is different from what the world gives. His peace is literally outside this world. It is peace which brings wholeness that affects both the whole created order and us as individuals, and the friendship that we can each have with God. It is this peace with which Jesus greets his disciples, and they are overjoyed as the penny begins to drop that Jesus is the risen Son of God. And Jesus breathes his Holy Spirit on them. Okay, John's account is different from Luke's account of God giving his disciples the Holy Spirit at Pentecost, as we read in Acts. I wouldn't worry about the differences, whether that means the disciples got a double dose of Jesus' Spirit, or whether this is John simply trying to condense events before he gets to the end of his book. It doesn't matter. The point is that his disciples recognize Jesus as the risen Son of God, who can enable them to feel at peace, that complete wholeness in body, mind and spirit, and to be empowered with the Spirit of Jesus, the Holy Spirit. All this then leads into the episode of Thomas first struggling to believe that Jesus has resurrected from the dead. Of course, Jesus puts him right on that. I think it is great that Thomas had to think this through more deeply. I think it is great that he expressed his questions, and great that he got answers too. There is nothing wrong with questioning belief in the risen Jesus, but we do need to be prepared to allow Jesus to reveal more of his divine nature to us, and then for us, like Thomas, to trust that. As Jesus says to Thomas, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." We may have questions around our need for Jesus' peace, of him breathing his Holy Spirit into our lives afresh. Questions are good. Yet we do need to allow Jesus to speak into those questions, and for us then to trust those answers. Anyway, Jesus offers us his peace, and he can empower us with his Holy Spirit. He resurrects physically, resulting in our physicality being welcomed into the heavenly realms, although that is an aspect we'll think about another day. There is so much that Easter challenges us to work out. What does that eternal hope mean? Peace, being given the Holy Spirit. Ultimately, Easter challenges us to answer the question, do we believe Jesus is the Son of God? As John concludes this episode, he writes, Jesus performed many other miracles in the presence of his disciples which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Then Easter also challenges us to start working out afresh what it means to have life in his name. Well, at the very least, that must mean that our lives are affected by Jesus' peace, and that our lives are affected by his Holy Spirit. That is pretty much a standard kind of post-Easter message, the challenge to allow our lives to be affected by Jesus' resurrection, to be affected by his peace, to be affected by the Holy Spirit. So we face at least a further 3 weeks of lockdown, and there is much political chatter about how slowly we need to emerge from our homes and how socially distanced we will need to be until a vaccine is found. We're 3 weeks or so behind our continental neighbours in this, and as we look on at their experiences, the call for a so-called exit plan will only get louder. I wonder what will be part of your exit plan, what you are dearly looking forward to doing should some form of normal life eventually return. One of the places I dearly want to walk again is Woolacombe Beach, to enjoy the surf and to feel the sand between my toes. I wonder what you long to do. Yet more than that, How will you allow this whole experience to shape the rest of your life? People talk longingly about the need for a better society, one where medical staff, especially the lower paid end, hold more social capital than our so-called celebrities, where people are more friendly and kind towards one another. How will lockdown and our need for good health affect our society, our world in the future? These are very concrete questions that we need answers to. Actually, the question as to how the events of that first Easter how that will affect the rest of our lives should be equally a concrete question too. How will Jesus' resurrection, meaning he's alive now, how will this affect how you live the rest of your life concretely? How will his peace, how will his Holy Spirit affect how you live the rest of your life? With hope as a light burning in the darkness? And actually, as talk does move towards how lockdown may be ended, how will your Easter belief affect how you live in a post-pandemic world? Will you be happy to express how your belief has shaped and sustained you through these past weeks? Will you speak about Jesus' values and his deep love for those who are poor to influence how we will act in society when our doors are flung open once again? One thing is for certain: the world can no longer be the same as it was. Into that space we can bring Jesus' influence and hope. Into that emerging space we must bring Jesus' influence and hope. So let me end by inviting you to begin those conversations. Okay, this morning this is a rhetorical question. We can't talk and share ideas so easily together. But how does this story of Easter affect your life today? Will you let more of that story affect your life story today? What will you do to help that? And how will your Easter belief affect society when lockdown ends? Will you let your voice be heard amongst the cacophony for change? The time to speak into all those questions, while we have a bit more time available on our hands, can begin now.